Hello everyone, welcome to this mini chapter on order blocks. Now I've already explained what order blocks are in chapter 2 and I explained it in great detail, but I received like hundreds of DMs from students asking me about order blocks and its different intricacies and details, right? So I decided why not, instead of replying to each one of them, let me make a full video on it, right? Let me make a full video on order blocks explaining every single aspect of it, right? How they are formed, why they're so important, and most importantly, how can you correctly identify an order block, right? So here's the mini chapter. Now, after watching this chapter, I don't think you'll have any confusion left about order block, right? And you'd be fully capable of differentiating between the different forms of order blocks, and you'd be able to correctly identify it and annotate it on the charts, right? So let's get into the video. So first of all, let's define what an order block is. Like what's the definition of an order block? So if you've been following ICT or all these other people on Twitter and YouTube, then you must have heard that the way they define an order block is that they consider the last down close candle or the last up close candle before the down move as an order block, right? That's how they define an order block. But that's the wrong or incorrect way of identifying or defining an order block, because that's predominantly based on patterns instead of logic, right? And what we must seek in trading and in our analysis is logic and a logical framework, right? So that's the incorrect way of defining an order block. And you might have seen hundreds of times when you identify an order block based on that definition and based on that vague and incorrect definition, it always ends up not working for you, right? And you miss moves because of that. And then you try to second guess yourself, wondering what the actual fuck happened and why did this happen, right? Now I know for sure that this is the case for most of you when you deal with order blocks and key levels, right? And you might be wondering how to solve that problem, right? Now to solve that problem, I've came up, I don't know someone else, but this is the most refined and objective definition that I could come up with for an order block. And moreover, it's the correct definition and it's the logical definition for an order block, right? So an order block is a candle or a sequence of consecutive candles, right? So that means it can either be a single candle or it can be a sequence of consecutive multiple candles, right? That either takes out liquidity in the form of taking out a high or low, or it fills liquidity, right? This is like the basic definition of an order block. A candle or a consecutive sequence of multiple candles which purges liquidity or fills liquidity. Now, when such candles get engulfed and price closes above or below it, an order block forms, right? Meaning that candle or those sequence of multiple candles turn into order block when price closes below or above it, right? Now, this is exactly how you can identify and define an order block in the most refined and objective manner. If you just stick to this definition, you're going to change your whole perspective on order blocks, and you would start looking at it with a refined and objective perspective based on proper logic. Now let's move on to the next slide and let's discuss the core concept of order blocks. Now we have to know exactly why does an order block has so much significance and why is it considered a proper and valid key level, right? Now the two main reasons for why an order block is considered valid and a valid key level are the following. So these are the two purposes that order block serves, and that's exactly why when price close above or below it, price uses such price action for future reference as a key level for price to react off of, right? So the first core aspect of an order block is that it purges liquidity, which is like the main prerequisite for a key level. So an order block purges liquidity in the form of taking out highs and lows, right? Which mean it has taken out liquidity. That's why it's considered a valid key level. The second purpose that an order block serves is that it fills liquidity in the form of filling or testing FEGs or testing previously untested and unmitigated order blocks, right? Now that's how you can correctly identify an order block. If a candle has taken out liquidity, right, and then price closes above it, then you could use that candle or that sequence of candle as an order block. Similarly, if a sequence of candle or a single candle fills liquidity in the form of filling an FEG or testing an order block, and then price closes above or below it, and you can use that particular candle as an order block, right? That's how you identify and draw out an order block. So these are the two main things that an order block does, right? Now it doesn't have to do both of them, right? But it has to at least do one of these things. It must do or does either one of these things to be considered a valid key level in a valid order block. Now let's move on to the next slide to see some examples of how price purges liquidity and how an order block forms. So right here you can see that we've got this range low, right? And beneath this low lies liquidity, right? As we all are aware of, right? We know that above highs and below lows lies liquidity, right? Now what happens is that price comes down below and purges this low, meaning it purges liquidity or takes out liquidity, and it does it with these sequence of consecutive candles right here, right? This particular candle right here is the exact one that purges the liquidity and takes out the liquidity, meaning it takes out the low, but then also the next two candles with it also plays a role in purging liquidity. So when price close above these candles, we would regard this sequence of candles as an order block. Now you can see what happened is that price went above and closed above these candles with this particular candle, and now these candles are considered a valid order block, right? Because they've done and followed the two main important rules for an order block. First of all, it purged liquidity in the form of taking out and purging below this low, and then second of all, price closed above it, so this is a valid order block. Let's move over to the next example. So right here you can see that we've got this range high, right? And what happened is that price purged that high with this particular candle, right? Meaning this particular candle right here purged liquidity and took out liquidity in the form of taking this high. Now when price closes below this candle will become a valid bearish order block. And you can see right here, price closed below it and then it tested this bearish order block and reacted to it explosively, and price expanded lower again, right? Let's move on to the next example. So right here, first of all, you can see that with this candle right here, we took out a low to the left and we purged liquidity by taking out that low, right? Now you cannot see that low on this chart, but I've drawn out this high, this low right here, and you can see that price went below that low and purged it, and now when price closes above it, it will become a valid bullish order block, right? And that's exactly what happened. Price closed above it and then it came down to test it and then reacted off of this order block. Now what you can also see right here is that before we tested this order block, this bullish order block, we formed this high right here, which generated liquidity below this low, and then price came down below and took out this low with this particular candle right here. And now again, based off of the definition of an order block, you can see that we've taken out this range low, right? And we purged liquidity below this low with this candle. And not only that, but also with this particular candle, we also tested a previously existing order block, which means this candle also fed liquidity, right? So now this candle has done two things. It purged liquidity, and also along with that, it filled liquidity in the form of testing an order block. So now when price closes above it, this will become, and this candle will become a high probability and a high quality order block. And you can see we reacted to this order block and expanded above explosively, right? This was a type of an order block which not only purged liquidity but also filled liquidity. So this was a high probability order block. This is how you identify a high probability order block. Now let's move over to an example for an order block which only fills liquidity, and let's see how it looks and how it forms. So right here we can see that we've got this FEG right here, and what happened here is that with this down close candle, we filled it liquidity in the form of testing it, right? In the form of testing this FEG. Now you can see that with this candle, we did one of the core things that is needed to be done by an order block before it's considered valid, and that is that this candle filled liquidity in the form of testing this FEG. Now when price closes above this candle right here, this candle is going to become an order block, and you can see that the price came down below and tested this order block and reacted off of it and exploded higher. But you can also see another order block of the same form in nature right here as well. You can see that we tested this previously existing order block with this candle right here, which means that this candle has filled liquidity in the form of filling the unfilled liquidity of this untested order block, right? And it did it with this particular candle. So that means now when price closes above this candle is going to become an order block, and price is going to test it and react to it, right? And that's exactly what happened here. In this example, we had two order blocks, right, which didn't purge liquidity, but it did fill liquidity, so that's why they were considered valid. This is how you identify an order block which fills liquidity instead of purging liquidity. Now here's another example. We've got this order block right here, and you can see this proper logic and reason behind why this candle is considered an order block, right? And that is a homework for you to figure out, and you have to tell me how is this candle an order block, right? Sorry. This candle right here is an order block, and it's a homework for you, and it's a test for you, and you have to figure it out and then tell me why is this candle a valid order block. Okay, so the fact of the matter is that this candle is an order block, and what happened is that price came down below and tested this order block with this candle right here, which means this particular candle filled liquidity in the form of testing this order block. Now when price closes above it, this candle will become a valid order block, and you can see that that is exactly what happened here. Price reacted to it and exploded higher. Now with this particular order block, you can see that I only chose the body of this order block, whereas for the other ones I chose the wicks too and included the wicks too, right? Which brings us to another topic for order blocks, right? So let's move on to the next slide and discuss whether to choose the wicks or the bodies for an order block, right? Now the simple answer to that is that it depends, and there's like no black and white to it. You have to look at it. You have to look at the scenario that it's in and then decide it based on how price reacts and how price action forms near the order block, and then you can decide whether you want to choose the body of the candle or the wicks of the candle as an order block. So the different scenarios we've got are the following. The first one is that if price closes just above or below the open of that candle that purged liquidity or filled liquidity, then you would use just the body of the candle as an order block, because price is only closed above or below the open and it hasn't closed above, below or below the wick, so you would only choose the body as the order block. So it basically means, right, that if price closes below or above just the open of the candle that purged liquidity or filled liquidity, instead of closing above or below the high or the wick, then in that case you would only use the body, right, because it hasn't yet closed below or above the wick, so you can't choose the wick in that case, right? So that's the first scenario. The second one we've got is the opposite of the first one, which is that if price closes below or above both the open, right, both the open and the wick of the candle, then in that case you would choose the whole candle as an order block, right, including the wicks with it, right? This is the second scenario for how you can choose an order block. Now let's look at some examples here. So here you can see that this candle purged liquidity and then price closed above it, but it only closed above the body or the open of the candle, right, and not the wick. So in this case we only choose the body of this candle as an order block, and price would react to the body of this candle only, right? And you can see that's exactly what happened, right? Now again here in this example you can see that that price purged liquidity by taking out this CRT, right, and then price closed above the candle that purged liquidity, but it only closed above the open. So in this case again we'd use the body as an order block and not the wick, right? Let's look at another example right here. Again in this example that I also showed you previously, right, you might have been wondering why I only chose the body of this candle as an order block, and now you know why, because price only closed above the open or the body. That's why I choose the body as the order block. So here's the scenario 2, and in this case price closed above the whole candle including the wick. So in this case we would also use the wick of the candle as an order block too, right? And we would include the wick as well with the body. Now here is another example in which price closed above the wick, so I use the wick as an order block too. So you can see right here, this is how you basically differentiate between the different forms of an order block, and that's exactly how you can decide whether you want to choose the open or the body of the candle or the whole candle including the wick too. That's how you decided, right? You decided based on how price has closed above it. If it closed above the body, then you'd only choose the body, but it closed above the whole candle, then you choose the whole candle. You can see that we decided that based on proper objective logic, right? And we didn't just random guessed it, right? Based on pattern on anything that most people do. That's how you identify and draw out an order block. Now let's move over to another example. So here again, another way of choosing between the bodies and the wick is by looking at the size of the body and the wick. So if the wick is significantly smaller as compared to the body, then you can just use the body as an order block even if price has closed above or below the wick, right? But in case if the wick is larger compared to the body, then you can include the wick too and use the wick and the body as a whole as an order block. Now it's up to you whether you want to choose between the wick or the body based on this approach that I've given you or based on the one that I gave you before, right? It's completely up to you. I'm not gonna force anything on you. That's completely your choice, right? I've given you both the approaches. Both of the approaches has their pros and cons, and it's your job as a trader to decide which one suits your style the best. Now choose only one approach off of the two, right? Don't just interchange between the two approaches, just choose one. Now if you had to ask me for advice on which approach is better, then I would say that I don't know. It's up to you to decide and to gather data. But if you ask me which one I choose personally, then I'd say that I choose the first approach because that one is more objective and that one is based on logic. Now let's look at some examples here. You can see that the wick of this order block is comparatively smaller as compared to the body, and even though price closed below the low in the wick of the candle, you could choose the body because the wick is comparatively smaller. Another one we got here is this example right here. In this case, you can see the wick is larger compared to the body, so you're going to include the wick too as an order block. That basically sums up order blocks, and this video explained everything about order blocks and different details. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully you've made notes.